Hi, this is 𝗙𝗵𝗂𝗂 coming to you direct from London, the United Kingdom, and welcome to another episode of the SMMA Mastermind podcast. Now, if you are watching this episode outside of our Facebook group for social media marketing agencies, make sure to find a link above or below this video or go to smmamastermind.com to join in, especially if you're looking to start or scale a digital marketing agency. Now, with that out of the way, I have a very special guest joining me all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. His name is Chris Brown, not the rapper, the singer, but is a digital marketing consultant. And we are going to talk about the customer journey, the customer experience, which is quite an important part that often marketers, I suppose, miss out on. But that's the topic of the show. Chris, Christian, whatever you prefer, welcome to the show.
I appreciate the introduction, Abu. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much for joining me. Now, for the people who don't know who you are, how about a bit of an introduction, a bit of some background into how you got into the digital marketing space?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess we can take it all the way back. My mother was a programmer, so grew up in a very technologically advanced home before I realized it. I went to business school because, you know, coding you can teach yourself. Engineering is a little harder, but I felt business, for somebody who was at the time 17 in college, allows me to not pick what I want to be when I grow up, right? So whether you're in the hair business, the horse business, the helicopter business, completely different worlds, but it's all business, none the same. So went to college in 2009, started an agency as an undergrad, grew the agency to about 30 employees, 7 figures in revenue, exited, sold my shares essentially, moved to the great city of Atlanta, Georgia. And it's been working in different roles and capacities, from everything from, you know, design to I've been ad ops managers, marketing managers, CRM specialists, email, social, ad, all those things, from startups to small businesses. And I'm currently employed as a digital marketing consultant at Slalom. And I still do work more of the creative marketing stuff through the 𝗕𝗂𝗶𝗴𝘂 agency.
Awesome. Well, I mean, you've dropped a bit of a bombshell there, which I wasn't aware of. That is, you grew a 7-figure agency with 30 employees,
Yep.
And then you sold your shares. I mean, tell us a bit more about that, because obviously coming into the show, you were just presenting yourself as a consultant to me. So.
Yep. Yeah. So you know, the agency world is not too different from consulting. The only difference is just how you handle clients, right? So agencies, the golden goose is a retainer. You want that client who's been, you know, you want to be the agency of record for a firm and keep the account for 3, 5, 7, 10 years. Consulting is a little different, right? So we get brought in as the big guns, solve the problem, teach the insiders how to handle it, and roll off. Hopefully it's not a year-long engagement, 2-year engagement. Building the agency, however, I knew nothing about those. I just had dreams as a kid of weird dreams, right? Of Madison Avenue, right? So that was the vision as from a Mississippi kid was, what's it like to be in New York? What's it like to be, you know, top floor, corner office, what have you, being a creative. So what we saw was an opportunity when social was around, right? So went to business school, like I said, a marketing major. And the people who I would deal with who are used to traditional marketing, this is 2009, had been in the business for 20 years, 30 years. And at the time I was 17 years old. So nothing I did, no matter how much I studied, no matter how much time, energy, and effort I put in it, I couldn't make 20 years happen overnight. Social presented a new challenge completely, right? So nobody in the space at the time had been doing social for more than 3 years, 5 years. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, I remember when Android app was released for Instagram, right? Like different time completely, but we just kind of went all in, right? We were selling at the time. It was a friend of mine, 𝗕𝗂𝗶𝗵𝗂𝗂. He still runs the agency to this day. We were selling Facebook pages before Facebook rolled out with timeline. So I don't know if you remember, mm-hmm. Facebook, you would have to like a page to see what was behind it. So doing a lot of that for companies who at the time thought that social media was a fad. Obviously those companies weren't clients, but we had clients who were eager to take a risk with us. We were hungry kids, so we would charge maybe 10% of what the market value was for it, just because we were excited to get real world experience. That kind of grew to, you know, professors who were like, hey, I've actually got an app portfolio. I'd like you guys to start marketing this. Or hey, you know, I've got this book. It'd be really interesting to see what you guys can do on social for that. So we really went deep on just digital advertising, whether it be Google, Facebook. Really went deep on just exploring what MarTech tools are out there. To this day, I can't count how many marketing tools I've used over the years. But as we continue to grow that out, get more web dev experience, I got experience as a creative director, managing a team, growing a team, presenting client work, making pitches, and understanding from an empathy perspective what the client was looking for, right? So no longer was it about me and my ego taking full front seat, as it's easy to do in a creative space, right? Like, I want to design this, I want to present this, I want this client. But it really kind of shifted my mind on, well, what is it? What is the problem that we're looking to solve? I was hanging around a lot of designers and was looking to take that design process or that design thinking and apply it to a very rigid business environment. So grew the agency again. To this day, it's still in business. They work with some great clients. But it was definitely a rocket ship. One of the most condensed learning experiences while I was in college, right?
Yeah, that makes it even more impressive, you know, because you graduated as well, and then you've got a 7-figure agency. So, like, I mean, how were you hunting for clients? How were you prospecting in the early days?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely not as glamorous as people think. I remember there were times where me and the 3 other partners would literally just take a $20 bill and just order from McDonald's every lunch. Let's go ahead and grind this out. Let's get some coffee and let's just cold call, right? Like, let's just send out pitches. You're going to get a lot of no's, but it got us comfortable with, at the time being a no-name agency, being comfortable presenting ourselves to people who had never heard of us before. And, you know, as baby-faced kids at the time, after about a year or two, you know, I'm still not 21, but to learn how to be taken seriously as a digital marketing professional who's under the age of 40, right? I still don't have any gray hairs. And at the time, that was very much the culture of the business was, you know, this is a preferred vendor. You know, I've been doing business with this agency for 10 years, 20 years. This guy's got some experience. He's a seasoned vet. I think you see a little bit of shift of people who are looking for young and hungry entrepreneurs. So again, not glamorous, a lot of cold calling, a lot of emails. We eventually adapted the strategy of being an inbound marketing agency. So I led the first blog post there, right? And we're deciding to educate the customers. And again, thinking about not what we wanted, which was sales and clients and revenue, but what could we do to create value without looking to capture anything, but what could we do to educate who our target audience was, right? So who was buying our social? Let's think about this whole process from their perspective, and then let's kind of lead them along the breadcrumb trail to, you know, eventually signing a contract with us. But really trying to think deeply and empathetically about that process for somebody who's a marketing manager, a marketing director, even the owner of a small business doing, you know, 6 figures, 7 figures a year.
And how long did it take you to go from 0 to 7 figures?
Well, I joined the company. I was actually the 3rd employee. So when I joined the company, it was just a founder and his cousin. So from the time that I joined, I want to say they were in business about a year before I joined. By the time I joined, it probably took us 2 years, 3 years to get to 7 figures top line revenue, right? So not bottom line, but top line. As the agency continued to grow, then obviously some of that kind of trickled down towards the bottom line. But it took 3 years, which was aggressive, 3 to 4 years, because again, we were paying ourselves little to nothing. All the clients were putting it back in there. We were hiring staff. So, you know, every employee from interns to full-time employees were making more than the partners. But we loved it. Because again, like coming from that college experience, like you're supposed to be broke at those ages. So let's just not get used to getting real money yet. And really just were really aggressive in getting new experiences, willing to do some work for little to nothing, take risk on clients. I think we even structured some partnership deals in the beginning for companies who couldn't trust us. They couldn't sign a $5,000, $10,000 contract with us. So we're like, hey, let's do the work for free. Let's pay for the development. Let's pay for the analytics. Let's generate you reports every month. And let's just take 10% of the revenue that we generate. Let's take 25% of the revenue we generate. So we were really just hungry kids. Like, so anything that we could do to get a deal done that made sense for both parties, where they were happy and we were happy, it was that process versus some of the larger agencies I've been a part of. It's very much a rigid sales process, very much a rigid business development process. So we were very fluid in that, and, you know, putting basically 80% of the money back in the business, we were able to go to 7 figures within still 3, 4, 5 years.
Still, that's quite amazing. I think a lot of people don't last in this business for 3 to 5 months, let alone
That's fair.
3 to 5 years. That's absolutely awesome. Now, I don't want to go too much off topic because we're here to talk about customer experience. A lot of us talk about advertising. We think that you write great copy, you put out a great image, and the money's going to come in. We don't necessarily think about what happens post click. So, I mean, just for people to get a better understanding, how do you define what a customer journey is to someone who is not very digital savvy?
Right, right. I think as cliche as it might sound, right, it's all about empathy. I've caught myself using that word several times just on this podcast. But I think to your point about even advertising, what we do is we generate impressions. I think we take that word too lightly, right? So you're literally making a first impression many times, or a second impression, or third impression. So if you think about not just what it is that you want to say, or like what's some clever, cool thing that I can say to show that I'm a creative person or I'm a good marketer, sometimes you don't have to overthink it. Like, to put yourself in the position of a customer, who is my target customer? Let me try to create a buyer persona. Let me try to understand my cohort more. Let me really see what the problem is that I'm solving. And let me communicate to that problem, which is a lot different than how we started, right? It's like, well, drop shadows. I want to design this, or I want it to look good in my portfolio, or I need sales, or I need revenue, or I need these things, which are completely irrelevant to the client most times.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. Now, when people are, I suppose, creating campaigns, where do they get the customer journey wrong in the mix?
Yeah, I think with our agency, and really just kind of in business as I've grown, I think what's the saying say? The man who needs nothing attracts everything, right? So I do think that some sales, and it works, can be very aggressive. I was actually having a conversation this past week with some consultants at Slalom. What does the future of advertising look like, right? So programmatic has been around, it's continuing to evolve. I work very closely with data analytics teams, and even just machine learning, AI, those whole buzzwords. But the question for me that I still have yet to get an answer for is, does the future of advertising look like you have a creative person who comes up with the idea and the messaging, and then the programmatic handles that and finds who you need? Or are we just going to have to get rid of creative altogether, and it's going to be just a math problem at this point, where it's just like the algorithms will figure it out, right? For me, I think thinking about the problem that you're trying to solve instead of the product that you're trying to sell is a fundamental shift in how you approach the copy, how you approach the photos, how you approach the just comm in general. But again, when you're hungry, when you're trying to make it happen, I've worked in the real estate industry as well. Like, you can see when a salesperson is not really trying to sell you the best house, but is just thirsty for a commission. I think a lot of that can come off in copy. I think it can come off in the ads as well. So.
Right. So when you're working with your clients, what do you look at to kind of craft the customer journey? Do you write it down? Do you storyboard it?
Yep.
How does it look for you?
Definitely storyboarding. For me personally, and it's just a preference of mine, I never try to convert cold traffic, right? So one of the things that I say never, obviously I still do, right? Like, if you buy, you buy. But when I look to set campaigns up, typically it's I like self-selecting campaigns. So if we're just talking Facebook, let's say you got a product, if you have any content around it, I'm like, let's promote the content first, very specific content, right? 10 things an HR professional should know about recruiting, right? Like, our 7 things that mechanics look for when working on foreign cars, right? Like, these are specific pieces of content that if you click it, you already self-select that you are, maybe the target persona. And then I'll like to retarget it in those ways. And then you craft out, maybe I'll start doing some storyboarding here, or I'm sorry, maybe I'll start doing some hard selling here. But even then, I think that the patience is probably the key part in that, is to, how much money are you willing to spend before you ask? How much are you willing to give before you take? Which is, like I said, my business friends, I'm the hippie. My hippie friends, I'm the cold-hearted capitalist. So.
So, like, looking at 2 approaches, right? Where one, you're trying to take someone on a journey from where they might be totally out in the cold,
Yep.
and then educating them, and then moving them further down your funnel to
Yep.
bring out with a cold, hard ask trying to get them to convert, you know,
Yep.
how do the two different approaches, do they make a huge impact in your
I
bottom line?
think so, because again, it doesn't stop there, right? So it goes back to packaging, right? So if somebody sees your packaging, if they click your ad, what does your landing page look like? I've had a conversation this week about human-centered design, and try to take that same approach with crafting a marketing funnel. So not only then, once they sign up, how easy was it? Was it 3 clicks or was it 1 click, or do you not care? It's like, as long as they buy, you buy, right? Like, are you looking to remove the friction on the behalf of the customer? Are you using white glove service, right? But then after they purchase, is it like, hey, I was really nice, but now I got your money, I don't need you anymore? Or do you send thoughtful thank you, follow-up emails, or do you have campaigns or automations put in place to just engage and not buy? Or is every email that you send 40% off, right? Are you trying to drive revenue? So I think that goes from everything from acquisition and activation to retention, NPS score, right? If you're into those things, or customer lifetime value, and not having a transactional relationship.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So when, you know, we've spoken about the ad and obviously how it hooks and brings people in, how, you know, how do we influence the customer journey through the landing page? What does a great experience look like?
Right. I think to answer your question without answering your question, right, to be very vague, I think it depends on what product it is you're selling, right? So if I'm selling, you know, coffee, right? Like if I've got Starbucks coffee, like what am I really selling? Am I selling Arabica beans? Starbucks hits me with that a lot. I don't know what an Arabica bean is, right? But if Starbucks was to tell me that this is a delicious drink that makes me more productive, now you're speaking my language. So, you know, you hear Gary Vee talk about it a lot, is how do you set up your campaign? So we are in the new era of marketing. No longer is broadcast, right, the play. You no longer have one message that is to everyone, very broadly speaking. You could now put in the effort to speak directly to a very specific cohort and have more personalization in your ads. It takes more effort for sure. But as you look to scale those campaigns out, the product that you sell might have 2 or 3 use cases. Maybe you target all 3 of those individually. The product or service you have might have, you know, 6 to 10 buyer personas. Instead of broadcasting, you look for those individually. And then with everything, right, it's no secret, you test and optimize. Like I've never had a campaign in my entire career that's had 100% conversion rates. So you're going to keep on testing, seeing what works, and just kind of, you know, hack away.
Now I'm going to ask you obviously something that is going to sound like a stupid question, but I know a lot of people watching this might have this going in their mind. So all of this out sounds really expensive, you know?
Yeah, for
Trying to
sure.
get a couple of images shot and run an ad.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it goes down. You got to start somewhere, right? So obviously the campaigns that, you know, a 2-person team might be running are not going to look the same as a $1 billion Fortune 500 company. But I think that the ethos is there, right? So if you start from your first ad to say, how is it going to be received, or rather than how can we make a quick buck, I think that'll determine the future of not only the culture in your marketing organization, the energy that's around you and the team, but as it continues to grow, you have to make the decisions like, okay, am I willing to invest in creative? You know, I deal with companies, small businesses all day long, right? Who are like, hey, we've been in business for 10 years. I've never spent $1 on advertising. That feels expensive, right? And you got people who are like, hey, you know, we spend 10% of our budget on ads, but anything more than that is expensive. You got companies who are spending up to 0.25% of the revenue, just kind of doubling back down. Anything more than that seems expensive. So, you know, it's all relative. But if you're taking a paid approach, which is what we talked about, all campaigns don't have to be paid, then it is going to cost you money. But how I look at marketing is a good marketing campaign is either going to take your time or your money. So if you don't have one, then you should have more time, right? Create more content. This is a great podcast. This didn't cost you anything to connect with me. I'm enjoying the conversation, but you're doing the work. You're obviously speaking to your customers. If your customers are agency owners, this is the content that they're interested in. So if you were to advertise, that would be one thing. But if you had less of a budget, create more content, create more value, share more information. This is information technology after all.
No, absolutely, absolutely. Now, we are in the middle of a global pandemic, and it'll be a bit silly not to kind of touch on it. How do you think, you know, the COVID-19 pandemic has impacted the marketing landscape, and how do you see it kind of affecting how we do marketing moving forward?
No, absolutely. I think now more than ever, the word empathy is important, right? Because this pandemic has affected us all differently. Um, I work in digital. I've turned my second bedroom into a bit of a studio here. So fortunately enough, that was the approach I was able to take. However, my wife's a teacher, so she can't work from home. She's an essential worker. She has to go out there, right? So who you're speaking to matters. Um, you know, personalization has been real for a while. But what I'm starting to see in my professional circles is a divide into almost three directions, right? So you're seeing some people who are patiently waiting for things to go back to normal, which is one camp. You're seeing people who are embracing this as America 2.0, if you will, and being a digital economy, because you now have users who were laggards who are ordering groceries online. Like, this is no longer just an internet thing. This is very mainstream. But then I've got friends who are just too tired, right? It's so much going on right now. There's a lot of panic selling. There are a lot of people telling you that you should be more nervous than you are. And there are a lot of people who are saying you shouldn't be as nervous as you are, and everything in between. So that can be emotionally draining. I think as a marketer, it is our responsibility to be considerate of the people who are asking for their money, right? Like, it's kind of insensitive to try to sell something to somebody who's going through the California fires right now. So do you change your copy? Do you pause your ads? Do you stop? You know, I've had clients who were, I was actually working on a project when the pandemic happened. And while everyone was unsure, this client, Fortune 500 client, decided to stop all advertising and promotion because they felt like it was in poor taste. That I appreciated them for that, just as a human. But then once we started to realize that there was just that pent up demand, people are still wanting to engage with your business. They felt more comfortable advertising. But, you know, I've also seen agencies that I've worked with go under because of the pandemic. So I think that this is a very unprecedented time for everyone. You're starting to see the effects of that digital divide happen, right? I've been a proponent of the internet for a while and saying, hey, let's take advantage of this amazing resource. But it is definitely affecting people differently depending on what their profession is, what industry they're in, right? Hospitality has been affected a lot differently than e-commerce, for example. So,
Yeah, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there. You know, I think more empathy is needed more than ever in any time in recent history, because obviously people are panic buying, and we have seen that across the world. And marketers, whether they know it or not, they often have, you know, they have immense power at their disposal that they can use for good or they can use for harm. So, you know, our time has flown by very quickly. So I've got one final question for you. So someone who is watching this, who wants to build an agency, a consultancy practice, you know, what's the biggest learnings, you know, whether it's one or a couple, that you have had from your journey that you could share with them?
Yeah, I'd say just patience is important, right? Like, anytime I start a new business or I work with somebody who's looking to build a concept out, I almost always, it's the first year feels like it's just a year in the hole, right? Like, the first year you're just preparing for the success. You're not going to actually see it until year 2, 3, 4, or 5. But anybody who's looking to start, I think now is a great time to start. But don't expect an overnight success. I've been doing this for 10 years now. I feel like I'm still nowhere near where I should be at. So, you know, is stay down. Just keep doing it every day. The hard days are going to be hard. The good days are going to be good, but it's still 24 hours.
Awesome. Awesome. No, I think that's the best piece of advice anyone can actually give. You know, keep on hustling, keep on patient, keep on grinding, and you'll get there. On that note, Christian Brown, thank you very much for your time.
No, I appreciate your time, Will.